This is our 2021 Yamaha Wolverine RMAX 2 XTR. If that's not the world's longest title, I don't know what it is. But we bought it used, and we're going to do a quick walkthrough review of it and share the things we like and don't like with it. So first up, this is in the sport utility type class of side-by-side because it has a miniature truck bed, and of course it has a dump feature, same as the other competition has, and it has a miniature tailgate. How great is that? All right, we got to talk about a few of the shortcomings with this tailgate and this whole setup. First of all, this bed is tiny. It's 30 inches. That's way too short. Why couldn't they make it at least 36? It's ridiculous. So carrying around an oversized tire, you can't even do it in the bed. Second problem, I think, this tailgate isn't strong enough to even sit on. It wouldn't take much to make this strong enough to sit on. I mean, come on. In the back, we have a 2-inch receiver, so you can actually tow a trailer, I think up to about 2,000 pounds, which seems a lot for this little guy, but I guess you can do it. Or you could put a bike rack in there, or any number of other things. This little plastic piece covers the stock muffler, so it doesn't really serve much purpose. And then there's some tail lights, so they basically do the brake light and reverse. For whatever reason, this drives me crazy with these side-by-sides. Why didn't they integrate turn signals into these lenses? I mean, would it really be that hard? Maybe put a switch in the dash, you know, so you can signal right and left. But they didn't. But you can get an aftermarket thing that turns the brake light into a turn signal. These tires here are a 30-inch tire. It's on a 14-inch wheel, non-beadlock. And they're pretty aggressive. They actually hook up pretty well. Pretty nice for a factory tire. They're a Maxxis Carnivore tire. The shocks on it are a Fox 2.0 shock. They have little adjusters, so you can adjust it from soft, medium, or hard. And you have to get out and turn each one of the 4 corners there. The fancier LE model had a in-dash switch for adjusting the shocks. But that is just an added complicated wiring bit that could go wrong. These shocks and springs get around 17 inches of total wheel travel, which is pretty respectable. It's actually the most in this segment, which is pretty cool, but not anything compared to the crazy sport ones now that you can get from Can-Am and from Polaris, where they're 24 plus inches of travel. Pretty good ground clearance under this thing. I think it's right around 14 inches of ground clearance. One complaint I would have with the rear trailing arms is that they are not arched at all. They're flat, so they're definitely the low-hanging spot to get caught up on stuff. The other thing that's kind of a little weird is that the whole underside of this thing is steel skid plate. It's all welded on, so you can't take it off without cutting it off, which is great. Partially great, but they didn't put any sort of UHMW to slide on stuff, so it kind of just gets you caught up on stuff. It would have probably been nice if they put UHMW on it, and maybe even make it so it unbolts so you'd have better access for servicing stuff. We'll see if that's a problem at all in the future. Coming down the side, it comes with the stock plastic roof. Really high quality, side-by-side quality. Yeah, not real impressive. The doors open like a normal door, except for there's no handle on the outside. I don't understand. How hard would it be for a side-by-side to put a handle? But you have to reach inside, and then it opens. So it's not a suicide door, it's just a normal door. And there's lots of gaps. These are not built to automotive quality. It's crazy. Huge gaps all the way around. Dust comes in to the cab from the underside of the door, in between, everywhere. Well, it's just what this industry is. Really not very impressive. Coming around the front, This thing actually has a really big wheel opening here, so there's plenty of room for bigger tire. You could probably fit a 32, maybe even a 35 up here. Pretty nice setup. A little less travel in the front. I think we're around 14 inches of travel up front. Stainless steel brake lines, whatnot. It's pretty nice. It has pretty aggressive looking front end. It has some marker lights and some headlights, and it's got a factory winch, which is pretty nice. A little worn winch with steel cable on it. A couple shackle mounts up here, and these front trailing arms are just slightly arched, so it's kind of nice. You get just a little ground clearance for that. It's not too bad. And then under the hood, this little hood comes off completely, and this has the battery and all the fun stuff under here. So you've got battery, coolant reservoir, air intake. One of the cool things with this air intake is it actually has a pre-filter, a foam pre-filter, and then the main filter, which is kind of nice because you can clean them out separately. And here's the winch solenoid. It's got a little cooler here, radiator. Pretty interesting. Not too crazy. This hood just kind of slides on and then clips back into place. And under the hood, or the back, is this little 2-cylinder Yamaha engine, which produces just over 100 horsepower and is mated up to a CVT transmission. It also has a wet clutch in it, which is a little unique for these guys. And it works pretty well, I would say. So let's take a look inside. So on the inside, you have a grab handle for the passenger that also extends and retracts. There's a little glove box that has a little gasket on it, so you can kind of keep that stuff a little bit dry. This is one of the coolest features, is the built-in navigation. So this can remove and go back in, and it's a Magellan style tablet. You got the winch control, some blanks for accessories. You've got a little plug for a DC plug, socket plug. More blanks here. The gear shift here allows you to go to low range, high range, neutral, and reverse. There's no park in this thing. 2 cup holders, a miniature center console cubby, really small, just barely big enough for the service manual, and it's got a gasket seal, which is kind of nice. These seats do go forward and back like a normal seat, and they're kind of finished in a kind of vinyl type of material here. On the driver's side, we have a what they call a D-mode switch that switches between sport, trail, and crawl, and that basically just changes kind of around the throttle input and whatnot. It's kind of a cool feature. I guess they considered it pretty cutting edge, but I don't know. Doesn't really, not overly impressed with it. You got the brights and the headlights, 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, and front diff lock. So this unit is a rear spool, so the rear is always locked, whether you're in 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. Unlike the Polaris or the Can-Am, where the rear differential can be unlocked, this one it cannot, which is good for durability, not so good for tearing up the yard or the tires if you're turning tight on asphalt, because those rear wheels will not differentiate at all. And then in the front, it's got kind of a factory limit slip kind of concept, and then it's got a diff lock, which fully engages, so you can have all 4 wheels spinning constantly. The steering wheel has a little tilt feature on it, and then it has a little digital gauge cluster, which is pretty nice, works pretty well. And it's got a little USB port here. Pretty handy, not too bad. This windshield is aftermarket edition, and it's terrible. It's awful. I would never go with another one of these plastic windshields because they are hard to see through. And then
the fitment is awesome. That's a gap.
So good fitment. Oh man. And the problem with only having a front windshield is it creates kind of this Venturi effect where it just sucks dust in from the backside, so you're just getting coated in dust while you drive around. Not the best. So if you're going to do a front windshield, either have it vented or put a back windshield in with your front windshield, which I think is what we're going to do. For the gas fill, it's right underneath the passenger seat. That's the gas tank. You're actually sitting on it. Kind of interesting. What don't we like about this? Well, first of all, this is our very first side-by-side that we've ever owned, and I know the industry, this is acceptable, but these things are so noisy. They make your brain hurt noisy. It's insane how noisy the engine is, the drivetrain, the whole thing is just insanely noisy. And they didn't even try to really limit the noise by adding sound deadening or insulation or filling gaps or anything. It's just, that's how these are, which is crazy to me. I think it's acceptable if it's a $10,000 or $15,000 rig, but when you're talking mid $20,000 on up, the quality is terrible for the money. That's my first complaint, and that's not just limited to this. It's all of these side-by-sides. I think if an auto manufacturer decides to make one of these things and build them more to automotive spec with gasketed door seals and actual good fitting body pieces and a quieter motor setup, they will dominate this industry by far. So whoever does that, I think is going to take over. So that's my first complaint, is the noise. And kind of along with that is dust if you're riding. If you just have a roof on this thing, then basically all of the elements and all the weather is just going to come straight through, which I know is how people normally do it, but I think it's nice to have a little bit of separation from the elements, especially if it's cold or raining or whatnot like that. But here's the thing that is ridiculous with them, is that to do a full enclosure on one of these units, it costs $4,000 to $5,000. That's insane to put a windshield, a back window, and 2 solid doors on this thing. That's so much money. If you pay $25,000 for this and another $5,000 to just make an enclosure, you're at $30,000. And then, if you want a heater, another $1,000. I mean, that's the biggest problem I see with these side-by-sides, is they nickel and dime you on everything that should be a lot of it standard. So if you want to make it road legal, $300. If you want to put dot-approved tires, $1,000. It's amazing how much money these things are. And you think that because the tires are tiny or the axles are tiny, that they'd be significantly less money than, let's say, a Jeep if you were building it. That's not the case. These parts are nearly exactly the same price as building a full-size truck. That to me is a huge problem with these. Another complaint I have is the fuel mileage. You'd think a 2-cylinder engine that only puts out 100 horsepower with a rig that weighs less than 2,000 pounds, that you'd be getting 20 miles to the gallon, maybe 30 if you were just driving it on the road at a reasonable speed. That is not the case. These little guys, you're lucky to hit 15. And I don't know if it's even possible to hit 20, but that's crazy. That's worse than our trucks are that have way more power, way heavier. It's just insanity to me for the money that these aren't better. I think that they are making a huge amount of profit on these things because all you basically have is a roll cage chassis with some plastic bits kind of bolted onto it. So that's my major gripes with these side-by-sides. And I don't think it's specific all to this unit here itself, but it's more to the whole industry. I think my last complaint about these units is that the maintenance interval is really pretty intensive. And I understand that it's a really small motor, really small drivetrain parts, and you're using it really hard. But the oil change interval is about 1,600 miles. You've got a service for the CVT transmission, re-lubing it and so forth. And that's pretty invasive, pretty hard to get in there and do all that work yourself. And that's also supposed to be done right around the oil change time, and maybe sooner depending on how you use it. The things that we love about this thing, it's actually quite a lot. So we bought it to replace our rock crawler. And one of the problems that we had with that is that it was an older truck, so it just needed a lot more maintenance. It's a lot nicer having a new rig and have the parts availability and be able to just bolt on some stuff and go have some fun. So that's one of the great things with these side-by-sides. The second thing is that they more or less have a lot of the components that you would modify in a truck. You've got really nice suspension, you've got good ground clearance, you've got front and rear locking differentials, all the main essential ingredients. That's really nice with these things. But the really nice thing with them is that they're small and light. I mean, you can't get a small and light 4-wheel drive truck anymore. A Jeep the smallest Jeep weighs over 4,000 pounds. You know, the new Ford Bronco, over 4,000 pounds. And they're huge, you know, 75 inches wide. They're big. Not to say that these aren't getting huge these days, but it's nice because they are smaller, they are lighter, and just more nimble. The other thing is that we live in the desert. So one of the things that we found really fun with this is just to be able to hop in it and just take a burn out through the desert for 30 minutes and fly around, hit some little berms, just have a good time, and then park it back in here. It's a little harder to do with a four-wheel drive truck. Another thing that we really like with it is that it's super easy to clean. It gets super dirty every time we use it, but it's easy to clean. We just pressure wash it off and good to go. Basically, most all of it's kind of waterproofed inside, so if you're careful, you can just kind of spray it out, and pretty easy to maintain that way. And the last thing that we really love about this little side-by-side is that it fits in our enclosed trailer that we already own. And partly when we were shopping for one of these is that we wanted it to fit in that trailer because we didn't want to have to buy another trailer for it. And being that we live in Arizona, we can make this road legal, which is pretty great. Now, the question I've heard people ask is, why did we go with this unit specifically? Well, we wanted a truck bed. Even though it's super miniature, our idea is that we want to take it on some of the extreme rock crawling trails in the Sierra Nevadas and Moab and be able to camp out of it for a night or two while we're out on the trail. And most side-by-sides just don't have the room even to carry overnight camping gear very easily. This is where this little unit is really nice, to have that little bed space to be able to carry around some extra gear. We chose the Yamaha because of its reputation for reliability and its past history overall as just being a good solid company with building good quality parts, and really didn't want to deal with a lot of reliability or issues with a rig that we're using just for fun. So hopefully this one will hold up well and will prove to be reliable, but time will tell. That kind of wraps up the things that we really like and things that we don't like, as well as kind of from a new perspective from coming from trucks to side-by-side, what that experience is kind of like. I think overall we're really enjoying it so far. It's just a lot of fun, but it's certainly not an inexpensive toy to own, and we will be doing a lot of modifications to this one. So stay tuned for upcoming videos. You'll see some of the stuff that we're going to be changing out on this, and we'll give some feedback on it as we go. So give us a thumbs up, stay tuned, and we'll have more stuff coming. Thanks so much. What are your favorite things?
I love cutting cookies in the driveway. We also have a lot of washes around us, and it's a lot of fun to zip through them. I'm actually really surprised. I didn't expect to really enjoy it quite this much, but it's a lot of fun. I really do like it, and I'm really excited. We're going to take it on a trip in April and really test its limits.
Yeah. So do you like drive more than the Tacoma?
I do, because it's easier to know where the limits are on this one than the Tacoma. The Tacoma was very well built, and it had hydro assist and really big tires, and it was very, very large. I wasn't as comfortable with it.
Yeah, this one's pretty light, tossable.
It's little.
Yeah, she would drive the Tacoma all that much, but this thing, she's always like, oh, let me drive.
It's true. I like it.
All right. You
What
say
is-
goodbye?
Oh. Please cut some of that out. Thank you. Bye.